I created
From
Straata.
Motswako.
I created Straata.
You created Straata.
Yeah.
What was the influence and what was the idea? What was the vision?
One,
for
it was
Straata?
it was a bit selfish in a way because I looked at Swiss Beats, I looked at Dr. Dre, I looked at, let me say Swiss Beats and Dr. Dre and Pharrell and them, right?
Yeah.
And my one focus was Dr. Dre because I knew I had a unique sound and I wasn't going to change it to conform to anything that was happening,
Yeah.
right? And to what the things that the youth at that time were going through were far detached from the stuff that was Motswako. It was far detached from Tswaka, the you ain't heard the old thing. It was far detached from Monate Twa. We had far deeper and darker issues that we were going through. And it was not a time where we had come back. I had come back Klerksdorp. I mean, the birth of Straata was just basically GAT. I created their sound. Going like Hash and Tainoko. I literally molded their sound because they were like gangster rap in Motswako. You know what I mean? And then when I got back home, obviously there was MDB who I was partially when I met MDB when he's like more 14, 15 or somewhere around there, he'll say it better. And the first day I met him was like, yo man, you Mandlera's dope boy. And Gomes was like, no, you Mandlera's dope boy. And like, fuck yeah. And we've had a very cool relationship since then. Mm-hmm. And then there was another artist who was actually around there when we were formulating Straata. And so we realized that there are things still looking Motswako is only Mafikeng. And this is where now things get interesting, and this is where earlier on where I was like, I have a very complicated relationship with radio, and especially radio within the Northwest, is because if you're on TV and anybody who was Twan, they're automatically from Mafikeng. If you think about it, there's nobody on TV that's from Klerksdorp, that's from Ottosdal, that's from even characters. And actually I'm speaking about characters, right? So they'd rather have a chick who's from Pitori and West Pitori and they'll say, no, she's from Mafike, and you're like, what the fuck? You know? So Motswako automatically, when you say it's a Motswako, automatically you're from Mafike. So Motswako was attached to Mafike too much, and I had left Mafike because I had reached my ceiling, and that's something that a lot of guys don't seem to get. You need to get the fuck out of town if you've reached the ceiling.
Oh shit.
You can't be loyal to a city to an extent, yeah. This is where I'm at, and this is where I'm only ever going to be, because, Kazi, I can tell you this right now for free. The world is bigger than you fucking think. You need to get the fuck out of town, and you need to go experience. I mean, I know so many artists, and I know so many MCs, and fine artists, guys by Shutang, guys by Etsang, by Loring King. For example, let me show an example. MDB left Klerksdorp, hit Bram, and he fucking went to the top of the fucking thingy. When I got to fucking Joburg and I met some of the guys some of the producers that MDB was going to introduce me to, I was already known to these producers because there's a fucking army of fucking MCs. There's a fucking army of producers. Go Pram alone. Go Pram alone. Like, you ain't shit in your city alone unless you look everybody on a national scale. Yeah. And then unfortunately for me, I had done so much stuff locally. By the time I left and I went to outside the Northwest or outside of home, motherfuckers already knew my sound, but only on the underground. So the people that needed to know my sound were the people that were in tune with what is happening, and were the people that could look at it and respect it.
Right.
So I left my Mafike because I had reached my ceiling. I couldn't sell a beat for more than a $1.5. I couldn't, there was only that much pool of artists that I could work with. There was only so much experiences that I could express. So I came back home and I gave up everything. Never be afraid to walk away from something to go start afresh. Never be afraid to do that. If you know you've reached your ceiling, you must always be ready to walk away and just go, fuck it, I'm gonna do it elsewhere. And start from the ground up. Majita Paya, they have their pride, they have fear, and they have so many things that are just cock-blocking them, ways that they fear leaving their comfort zone and going to do something else, and going somewhere else, or to start afresh somewhere else, or to become, or to start from the bottom and become king somewhere else.
Yeah,
And so
bro.
when I got back home, I realized some of the issues that were here, that were going on here.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that I had been talking about from Mafikeng, now that they were amplified. So I came back home and I realized, oh, we can't be Motswako. We are not Motswako for shit. We don't sound like that. We need our own avenue. We need our own voice. So instead of saying, yo, Straata is the new, it's not a new genre. It's just a new page in Motswako. It's just a new page. And before we even dropped the first record, Motswako, I think, I met Todi, I got his approval. I met Tux on the very same day and I was breaking down Straata to him and he's like, I got his approval. Mojo, I got Mojo's approval. The late Jabba, I got his approval. Cooley, I got his approval and some, yo, go with the Straata shit. And we ran. And it was no shit, and it was no disadvantage. Or the MDB was doing his thing there, I was doing his thing there, and we were running with it simultaneously, you know. So Straata is not necessarily about Klerksdorp. Straata is the new voice of the Northwest, and we're dealing with some of the issues that are happening in the Northwest: drug addiction, prostitution, crime, corruption within the structures of our offices or our governing offices or and the provincial whatever. Because hey man, if you're in Klerksdorp, ANC is a gang, just like my VLA, just like my SVK, my Al Qaeda, my AMI. The ANC is a fucking gang here. Anybody that's going to tell you any different is part of the gang. So we have far deeper issues. Our struggles are far deeper.
Sure.
Majita, the problem back in the day was the fact that maybe if you look up Papa you're sniffing a little bit of cocaine, you know, you live in a high life. Right now, you're sniffing cocaine at the age of fucking 13. You're sniffing cat, they're taking crystal meth. They're fucking, you know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So, and at some point, I was part of the problem because shit, dog, I've been doing drug deal and gangster rap ever since. Because that's what I knew, that's what I came from. Mm-hmm. You understand what I mean? So it just came to a point where is that we had to express the issues of what's going on with the with the youth Yamu Northwest and dealing with the issues that day. And the fact is, I'm not from Mafikeng, and I give Wistswana the same way as Auta Mafikeng, and that's why I have a complicated relationship with radio.
Yes.
That's where my complicated relationship with radio is. Because right now, as a kid from the Northwest, or not Northwest, me as a kid from Klerksdorp, I can't hear anybody on radio that sounds like they're from Klerksdorp. For shit. Not even on a scale you're in. They'll tell you, but as soon as you go direction you're Okni and you pass Okni, as soon as you pass Tehani and you go direction, it's Obokolini, so what the fuck are we? You get what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So when am I gonna hear somebody that sounds like me on radio? On radio. Why? How the fuck is a kid from Klerksdorp going to know that he can have a career on radio because he doesn't sound like Stwana Sagomafike, which is what is considered Stwana. Stwana that's in the textbook is Stwana Samafike. It's like saying autism John Dollar can't be on course.
Yeah.
When Buddha was on course, if I'm not wrong. And Buddha is throwback as fuck. Oi, oi. Feel me?
Yes, sir.
So you can't have somebody on radio being on radio. We can't. I haven't heard somebody who sounds like they're from Kimberley and I can identify that they're from Kimberley on radio. So we're detached. Kimberley kile kwa although you know than KP but bo Freiberg so there's no uniting of what it is to be Motswano, to be somebody that's from the Northwest, fully encapsulated on radio. Not even like something like UFM embraces different forms of Setswana. And I get beef. I recently put out a voice note, and it rotated among some people on radio. I got a response from somebody, and he thought it very arrogant. Well, I responded Setswana. Although Nikis Nexa week Setswana completely, I was being multilingual. So he responded Setswana as a way of putting me down, but he wasn't saying it to me directly. He was responding to the person that gave him the voice note. So there is a hierarchy of who is Northwest and what is Northwest. So that's where Straata comes in. So we kick like some real shit that is not fucking Motswako, but is Motswako. that is not Mufftown. And there are people by law in their Straata from Mufftown. Pex is from Mufftown and he's Motswako. Tainoko is from Mufftown and he's Straata. Kid Kat is from Mufftown and he's Straata. There's guys like Streets. He's Straata, like fuck. So it's not only a Klerksdorp thing, but it's a new breed of MCs and a new hunger. And it's a new expression of what's going on within the Northwest. And that's where Straata is.
And I believe that, bro, in like the entire industry, with MDB paving the way, you paving the Strata itself, I truly believe that, it has solidified, its presence, in the game. Yeah. But what I want to know, bro, is that, like, in terms of you personally, having pioneered the sound, what's the plan for, 5-year, 10-year, vision in terms of the sound? Do you think it's going to change?
It is. It has to change. There has to be somebody that's going to take that's gonna hear this and say, I'm fully Straata and I make Straata beats. Because it's not like in Nagiliwan. There's Last Fiend, there's Sly Beats, there's freaking Keita Chankov, aka Van Sweet, there's freaking Tutankhamun, there's freaking there's guys that are freaking making intense Straata. And the people that I just freaking mentioned right now, those are just the producers. I'm not talking about the MCs. I'm talking about King Maada. Like, if you think about it, Klerksdorp is one of the most dangerous cities within the Northwest. And this guy's from one of the most dangerous he's from one of the most dangerous townships within this city, and he's from the most dangerous section in that township. King Maada ain't playing. And he's lyrically on point. You look at Malume Neo, you look at Galambo, Kile Rasta, who's conscious but he's rude boy as fuck. You look at people like Bo Last Fiend, again, as an artist. You look at people like Bo D-Locks. You look at people like Bo Mokhele Motsatsi, who are coming through and they're actually doing poetry and they are actually doing a different side of this thing, but they're doing it from the perspective of the streets. We're an army, dog, and most people, what they don't realize is the fact that, just like with Motswako, there will be some that come ahead, but we'll open the door.
Yes, sir.
We'll open the door. Because, man, I've always brought people with me. I've always carried a load with me, regardless. So what it's going to be in 10 years' time, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be in 10 years' time. But I know within 10 years' time, there'll be a kid from Klerksdorp who's going to be able to stand up proud and say, yo, man, I'm dropping a Straata record. That's how you end up with drill. That's how you end up with trap. It's because you start being able to identify with yourself. You start being able to look in the mirror and say, oh, that's me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.